This is Jack. Jack was a brand new creator that grew from 0 to over 30,000 followers on TikTok in less than 30 days. And I'm going to share with you exactly what he did to do this so that you can do something similar for yourself. So let's do this. So I know right now, if you've been trying to grow somewhere or you've been thinking about trying to grow on TikTok, it seems very overwhelming and very daunting. And it is definitely more difficult than it was a few years ago, but it's still absolutely possible. And Jack is a prime example of how possible it actually is. When I started working with Jack, I looked at the situation, I looked at what he was trying to achieve, and I gave him some tips that I give to all new creators to help them grow way faster. And so I'm going to walk through each one of those tips, explain how to use them and why they're so effective. And at the end, we're going to hear from Jack where I have an interview with him. We sit down and talk about all the tips that I gave him, how he took them in and actually implemented them into a strategy that works for growth, both for his following numbers and his business. Because that's really what it's all about. We want you to grow a following, but we also want it to turn into a sustainable and thriving business. And we're going to help you do all those things today. So the first tip that I gave to Jack and I'll give to you is to develop a deep understanding of who it is you're trying to reach. Who is the audience you're trying to build? What do they care about? Where do they hang out online? Who do they follow? What are their problems? What are their wants? Go as deep as possible into understanding your core people so you can constantly speak their language. Especially on TikTok, people are looking for a very tailored experience. So when they come across a piece of content that speaks like it's almost in their mind, that's the kind of content that really hits. So the better that you understand this, the more you can create content that fits that mold. And the faster you're going to get shares, the faster you're going to grow, and the faster these people are going to feel comfortable following you because they know they can expect more of this kind of content that was highly in demand for them and tailored to them. And the more selfless that you are with your content, the more that you give away completely for free, the more that you will end up benefiting from it. By giving people awesome content completely for free, you're enacting the law of reciprocity, which is a simple psychological principle that when you give something to someone, they feel indebted to give you something back in return. And the same thing happens online as it does in real life. But here you're doing it through creating awesome content for a specific group of people. Don't ever hold things back. Make as high quality and as valuable content as possible. You're going to win from it. And this is probably the step that gets skipped over by the majority of creators, and it's why they struggle so hard to grow, especially from scratch. And to help you with that, we have put together a complete course that I'm currently filming that will be launched here on this YouTube channel to help you grow from scratch this year online. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that because it's going to help you out a lot. And we also post a lot of other great content here too. Feel free to check it out. I think you're going to love it. The next tip that I gave to Jack was to post way more. As a new creator, the biggest problem that you have is overthinking. You think you know more than you do, and you don't even know what you don't know yet. And the only way you can discover clarity is through consistent action, and that comes through posting a lot of content. There's a quote from, I think it was Macklemore in one of his songs where he says, the greats weren't great because at birth they could paint. The greats were great because they paint a lot. And you as a creator, you are a creator of content. And if you're not creating, you can't expect to get better. You can't expect to feel more natural, and you can't expect to find your voice. So what I recommend is posting 3 to 5 times per day for new creators. And I know that sounds insane, but how you're going to get there is lower the bar for what you feel is worth creating, and also lower your production bar as well. This helps you achieve a lot. So first of all, you get to figure out what the audience actually wants. A lot of people don't make what could be awesome content because they feel like it wouldn't resonate with people. But until you make that piece of content, how in the world could you possibly know that? So you want to get way more experiments out there, which is what I would call your earliest posts, and get a feel for what actually resonates and what doesn't. You're purely experimenting here as a new creator, so let everything fly and see what sticks. And as a new creator, you have no idea what good content really looks like. Everyone thinks that they do, but until they actually start creating content, they really don't have a clue. So this is going to expedite your learning. It's going to help you get a lot more comfortable on camera, and you're going to detach from any sort of metrics to this. You don't really care about how well these things do. Obviously, the faster, the better, but this is really all about learning. This is where you're going to build your foundation and your skill set that will allow you to build anything that you want online in the future. But so many people spend so much time, wasted time, trying to make the perfect first few videos because they've waited so long for this. And that's just another form of procrastination that doesn't help them get to where they want to go. So fight through that, lower the bar of what you feel is postable, and just create. Added bonus to TikTok specifically is that just simple, plain talking head videos, looking at the camera as if you were FaceTiming your friend, does extremely well. People want that kind of intimate connection. So lower the bar, create way more, and experiment like crazy. And I know 3 to 5 sounds crazy, but you're not going to be doing this forever. This is the period of learning, and we want to expedite that learning by doing way more of the creating piece. To get ideas, what I want you to do is constantly keep a running note, either on your phone or in an app like Notion, to keep track of all of your single ideas for any kind of content. It's really important to have this place because whenever an idea comes to you, you have a place to jot it down really quickly. And once you train your brain to start thinking of these ideas, they're going to come to you way more frequently. And if you want to take this to a whole other level, start going on walks where you don't play any music, just go for a walk and ideas will come to you. I know it sounds abstract, but it will absolutely happen. Some of the best content ideas I've ever had was when I went for my hot boy walks and just waited for ideas to come to me. That's actually a sub tip that I would put into here, is to stop consuming so much content unless you're doing so with intent. A lot of people struggle with creativity because they're constantly consuming, and it becomes very difficult to be creative when you're consuming 99% of the time. It becomes near impossible, and you usually become watered down versions of whatever you see online. So let's drop your level of consumption a ton too. It's going to help you out a lot. And the final reason why I want you posting a ton in the beginning is because TikTok constantly rewards creators that do create a lot. I'm sure it's a combination of the algorithm liking it and then also them just getting better and building a following through being there consistently. But either way, consistently, I see it again and again. Those that create a lot, they get rewarded. So you want to take advantage of that completely. Next tip is to work on your ability to stop the scroll. To grow on TikTok, you have to be shown to brand new people, so that you need to develop the skill of stopping the scroll. And people usually use the word hook to describe what it is to capture someone's attention, to hook them in and get them to watch your videos. But don't get too hung up on the word hook. I think it has been beaten to a pulp the past few years. Instead, I want you to focus on the fundamentals of what stops a scroll. What are the kind of things that provide someone enough of a reaction or an emotional change to actually get them to commit to watching the video that's coming? To get better at this, go study creators inside and outside of your niche. Look at the videos that really performed, especially disproportionately well, and look for the things they had in the first few seconds of that video. 9 times out of 10, it's either something very interesting or very emotionally driven to capture someone's attention, and the right kind of people's attention. Any video that you see go viral, it's because it had an effective hook. It got enough random people to stop and watch this video. So you want to take note whenever you see that. And when you're just casually consuming content, look for the things that make you stop. I call this conscious consumption. Whenever I'm going through content and I see something that actually compels me to stop, I will take a second to break down why it had that impact. The more you do this, the more you're building the habit and the skill set of doing the same with any future idea that you have. And so when you have your huge catalog of ideas that we shared in the last tip, and then you figure out how to make a great hook, you can make a pretty good idea into a fantastic one when you combine those things together. A great concept and an even better hook. That is the ticket to growing super quickly. And to get better at hooks, you want to study your own performance. So in terms of views, shares, all this stuff, all the engagement pieces that you can actually see on the content, but also the retention chart for that video. TikTok and YouTube and basically every other platform will show you how people are consuming your video. So how long they're staying for, when people drop off, and all this information is gold for you, because you can figure out things that maybe you want to start doing or stop doing based on how people are responding and how much they're watching of each video. This information is gold and most people never really look at it. So make sure to study your analytics. It's going to help you make way better decisions and grow way faster. Tip number 4 is a massive one, and that is to create unique series to your page. And why series are so effective is because at this point, there are so many creators on TikTok creating every single day that people are far more numb to consuming content and they don't follow like they used to. It takes a lot more for someone to click that follow button today than it did 3 or 4 years ago. So how you can make this far more likely to happen when people find your content is to create recurring series on your page. This works for a bunch of reasons. First of all, if it really hits home, you have a great hook and it's a great concept. If people have this problem or desire and they know that this kind of content is in a series, they're far more likely to follow you because they're going to come and visit your profile. They're going to consume all the other videos in that series, and that alone dramatically increases the chances of them clicking follow. Plus, they know they can expect more similar content like this in the future, which just makes it so much more likely that they do commit to following you. Other huge bonus here is that all it takes is one of the videos within a series to take off for all of them to get a massive lift. Because when people start seeing this, let's say it gets a few 100,000 views or 1 million, a ton of those people are going to come watch every other video in that series, giving you way more views and helping you reach more and more similar people, because TikTok now knows who is deeply invested in your content. So I can't stress that one enough. Coming up with unique content series is massive. If you go look at all of the best creators, or the vast majority of them, they're leveraging this exact strategy, and it's totally why they're able to grow a consistent and large following, because they're creating some originality on TikTok that makes them an exclusive form of value for that kind of content, which is massive. Tip number 5 is a simple content principle, and it's to always try to create content for your ideal people that either leads them towards pleasure or away from pain. And since you've done the work in the beginning and you understand exactly how these people think, what they're after, and what they want to avoid, you can really tug on these heartstrings to make your hooks way more effective, and also come up with ideas because you know exactly what they're already thinking about. So when you create content around those principles, it feels like you're living in their brain rent free, and they're far more likely to pay attention. attention. So whenever you're stuck for content ideas, think about, what does my ideal person want to pursue? How can I lead them towards the pleasure that they want? Or the opposite, how can I keep them away from the pain that they're worried about and that they want to avoid? If you do those things, it's going to dramatically increase the performance of your content and also get way more people to follow you. And the last tip that I gave Jack that we'll cover before we get into hear directly from him is to create content that gets a ton of engagement. I know it sounds like a duh thing, but it really is important because all of these metrics are being tracked and dictate how far a video goes. And this is really a skill. Oftentimes when I create a piece of content, I know if it's going to cause controversy, and I know that that controversy is going to push this content to a way larger audience. It is completely okay. And in fact, you should be polarizing with your content. If you try to ride the line, no one's going to watch your content because there's just not the emotional investment there for people to care. For anybody to send something, comment on it, or even really like it, there has to be some emotional charge there to trigger them to do that. And so that's a skill that you can absolutely develop. And it's all tied into the things we've already discussed. When you understand the people you're trying to reach, you know the people that are not like that or who they don't want to be. So you can really play with that to create a ton of polarizing content that gets a ton of shares, a ton of engagement, and helps you benefit from it by attracting a far larger audience through understanding what people are passionate about and what gets them excited or angry. Really, you're trying to trigger some emotional response because that leads to engagement and that helps you. Two ways to do this. First of all, think about your ideal people, your avatar or your ideal follower, and what are the polarizing topics within that community? What are the things that people are really passionate about? Make sure to create content around those subjects. And then there are also just universal things that create emotion. So if you look at other videos that have gone super viral and they're talking head videos, usually they're around principles or subjects that people are very opinionated on one way or the other. And you talking about those and making content around them is almost a surefire way to get a ton of views as long as you make a decent hook to get people in. So those were the exact tips that I gave Jack to help him go from 0 to 30K in 30 days. And he implemented these like crazy. He did amazing work and the proof is in the pudding. He grew like crazy and you absolutely can too. And so to prove that and go a little deeper, we're going to hear directly from Jack to explain the thought process and the actions of a brand new creator that brought him to where he wanted to go beyond just these tips, the actual implementation and how he brought it to life. So if you've taken anything from this video so far, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a future video on the channel. And let's hear from Jack and how he crushed it. So Jack, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, of course, man. So why we're having you on here today is because in the first part of this video, I explained the tips that I gave you as a new TikTok creator on how to grow your account. And you executed everything and then some. So I wanted to pick your brain in terms of what actually worked for you as a new creator. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your content that you do create on TikTok.
Sure. So my background is in emotional healing and everything that I have done is what I teach. So it's all about like, here's the path that I took to go from being dysregulated, traumatized by a number of really intense events, and just like really unhappy because I was so stressed out and overwhelmed, and all of the different tools and techniques that I learned that helped me basically get back to like living my life, being who I want to be, and feeling the sense of inner peace in my body. So my content is just telling bits of my story and explaining new things that I'm learning as I continue to do this work and work with clients.
See, I love that so much because everybody has something that they want to put onto social, but they just don't, like they fight the urge to actually do it. So what was it for you? Like what process did you have to go through to go from thought to actually creating? Like what did that look like for you spiritually, physically, etc.?
Yeah, one thing I want to touch on right away is like TikTok, I didn't have any of my friends there. So I had this brand new account. There was like no pressure, nobody to impress or like feel vulnerable that I knew would be seeing this. It was just like me, some random guy on the internet. That was really helpful. And when I got to Instagram, I felt like more pressure because I already had all of these people I knew following me. So just making a new account was a huge first step. Second was just making a lot of content. The first thing that I did, I made these videos that were like all of these clips mashed together of me like walking through nature and then doing a voiceover and wanting it to be perfect and timing everything. And I did 3 of these and it took me 3 months. Like it was like 1 a month and it was just exhausting. What shifted was me just being like, why don't I just talk to the camera and just start testing stuff? Based on your advice, it was just like make loads of content and iterate. That seemed like a lot of work because the idea was do like 5 or 6 videos a day. And I realized, well, this isn't about like writing 6 perfect scripts and having all these different videos. It was literally just like put the camera somewhere where it can be turned on easily, like have a recording studio that's just super quick to start using, and then just start talking. That for me was like a huge shift in doing the work. And another thing that really helped me was just like watching other creators who I felt inspired by and making notes on what they were doing. So there was this guy, I think his name is Arian S. He makes videos about emotional healing as well. And I noticed he would use certain phrases in his hooks and throughout his video to keep people engaged. So one of them was, here's what you need to understand. And for me, I was like, oh, sick. Like, I'm going to use that now. And people seem to really feel like connected to me saying that. Or starting the video being like, if you're dealing with this specific problem, this is for you. So just thinking about that concept of hooks as well. And once I just started doing this, like making lots of videos, being thoughtful about word choice and hooks, I just started to grow my account pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the specifics of the growth in a second here, but two things I really want to underline that you nailed was the removal of friction, because people always think they have to have this perfect end result, and they create so much friction for themselves that they don't get anything out there, so growth becomes impossible. And so you experienced that firsthand, and you built a path to remove friction, and the results speak for themselves. And the second thing that I loved was that you mentioned that you learn from other creators. But one thing that I've noticed about your videos is that for sure you've been influenced by other people, maybe you've taken lessons from them, but it still remains you. And I think that's where you find true growth. You take what works from other people, you make it like an ingredient in what you're creating, and you just add it on there. Because every video I've watched of yours, it still feels like yours, even though you're using little elements that you've learned from someone else. So that's something I really wanted to underline, because I think a lot of people, like, they'll stare at someone's work for so long that they end up doing a watered down version of it, and you didn't do that. So kudos to you.
Sweet.
Yeah, 100%. And then so, because usually on TikTok, it's one video that pops off, and you had that same experience. So can you tell us about that video and then why you think that video took off in particular?
So that was a video that I made about self-abandoning, which is when people basically like don't do the thing that they said they're going to do or decided they want to do, and then they end up basically putting themselves second to somebody else's needs or priorities. I think it really hooked people because the first like 5 or 10 seconds of the video is me just saying, if you do this, if you do this, if you, over and over. I say like 3 or 5 things that are all like, oh, wow, I do that, I do that, I do that. And then laying down a hard truth, which is like, then you're self-abandoning. I think it was just such a simple snippet of wisdom for people of like, hey, become aware of this thing that you're not aware of. Take a second just to consider that you might not be putting yourself first. It's not a long video. I think it's maybe 1 minute or just over a minute. It has that powerful hook. And then I just say, you know, and here's what you need to think about to work on this. So it's like, here's the problem. I've lined it up super, super clearly. It's not thoroughly explained. It's just like, if you do this, this, and this, and then it's like, boom, okay, they're hooked. Then I give them a simple solution. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was that like simplicity and getting right to the point on something that really hit home for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that's super huge is that you understood the people you were trying to reach to and the kind of things that they were going through. Everyone who consumes content is consuming selfishly. As human beings, it's what we do. So if you don't speak their language or speak to their specific problems, they're not going to pay attention. So that was awesome that you included. There's an opportunity to have even like multiple hooks within one video. I think a lot of people think far too literally, and they think like, okay, it can only be this one thing. But that's a great example of creativity, casting a wider net to speak to your target people and then giving them an answer. Because sometimes like the other half of that video could have been valuable to so many different people, but if they don't hear something particular to their exact situation, they don't think it's for them. And so as your job as a creator is to try to like hook them in, right? To get them to then give them the later value, and understanding them deeply helps you to do that. So awesome job there. Have there been other videos since then that have popped off in a similar way, or has it been more of a steady growth?
It's been more of a steady growth, but there have been a few, like, I think that video got almost 2 million views.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was a good one. And one thing I just want to add about that video is at the end of the video, I said, if this has been helpful to you, follow along because I'm going to talk more about this. So just that like super, 3 seconds, simple, by the way, follow me because I'm going to keep doing this for you. And I think that was really helpful for my followers, for growing my followers. One thing that since then has happened is like, I probably had 5 or 10 other videos get like 50 to 200K views. And usually it's the same thing. I start the video off with a hook that really hits home on, hey, if you're dealing with this specific problem, here's what I'm going to explain to you. Hitting the nail on the head. I don't want to like overly think about the script all the time. Like I don't need to have every video be a home run. And consistency has worked. Like I've been growing my follower base. I've been growing my client base, getting lots of videos with like 3 to 15K views since then. And so, yeah, like I could probably find more hooks that like really get people, and that'll be a focus for the next year. But I think if I had over optimized for that, I'd probably have fewer videos, and there's no guarantee that the ones I did make would have popped off. So I think that consistency has worked really well for me rather than trying to like perfect every video.
Absolutely. And the piece that you mentioned about that specific video working so well was the inclusion of a call to action at the end. And I think what also made that even more impactful is that you gave them that call to action, but then if they actually went and visited your page, there is similar content like that. So you're actually backing up what you're saying you're going to give. So anybody who took value from that, they're far more likely to follow. So that's a really good point that I'm glad you mentioned. And the second piece is that we talk a lot about growth on this channel because that's what people are obsessed with. But what I love that you said is like, not every video needs to pop off when there's a purpose behind the content, right? Like you're growing a business, you're growing a brand, and sometimes that's not going to come through a super viral video. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to come like that. Because if you think about it like logically, for a video to go viral, it has to be pretty surface level because it has to appeal to that many people. But if you're running like a high value business, sometimes you need to go a little bit deeper. And I think a lot of people shy away from that because maybe it goes from 2 million down to like 30K or whatever, but they all serve a purpose. So as you're growing your business, have you noticed that some people have found you from your lower performing videos?
Something that's really interesting that's happened with at least 2 of my clients, like people who've paid me hundreds or thousands of dollars, they've been like, I watched every single one of your videos.
Wow.
And I'm like, there's over 100 videos on there. I think there's probably 150. And so what it seems to me is like people, they get engaged with one, right? They find some video, then they just start watching consistently. And it takes a number of videos to build that trust before they're ready to like reach out and have a conversation or sign up for something that is, in the link in my bio. Viral videos can actually be detrimental, right? Because if something goes viral and you get loads of people, but then you fail to speak to them over and over in your future videos, then like all those people are going to drop off. And like what matters more to all these people is just seeing me consistently showing up with this really supportive energy, this really high quality knowledge where they're like, this guy knows his stuff because I've seen him so many times. And I think that comes from like, let's say a couple of weeks or even months of seeing me on their feed every day or every other day kind of thing.
Dude, you dropped a golden nugget in there because you mentioned that people will come and watch all your other videos if they're highly engaged. So even a video that maybe, let's say even only gets a few hundred views, let's say at the time that it's posted, if that's a really impactful video that you feel needs to be shared for the right people, people will come and watch it long after the fact. Like you just said, Jack, like people will come and watch your whole catalog of content if they're invested. So that video that may have only got 300 views that you thought was a massive flop, like that might have been the closing deal that makes them reach out and contact you. So every little video has a purpose, and that's what I love behind that. But as someone who's gone through, because you've had both, like you've had the consistency piece and you've also had a few really pop off. What I've noticed whenever I have videos pop off is that you get exposed to a lot of people, and with that, a lot of negativity. So I would love to hear your experience with that, if you ran into it, and how you dealt with that personally to continue creating.
Yeah. So there's 3 points I want to speak to. First, people are just going to make fun of or make comments on whatever it is. So like I'm losing my hair and I get all the time, people are like, like you can take stuff for that. And those people, it's like, I have no time for you. The second is there's going to be people who you kind of like, you trigger something in them when they see your content, right? And like, this is actually a good thing because the way I understand it and what I believe is like, you want to polarize people with your content. you want to show up with strong opinions, right? And be open to changing them, but don't just make a wishy-washy video where you're like, this is kind of what I'm like, no, here's my belief, here's my evidence, and here's the story that makes it all real. Because when you polarize people, they're either going to love you or they're not going to like you. And that's fine, because you're there for the people who are engaging and who do love you. So it's taken me a bit of time to like build that thicker skin, and it's worth it. It's like the polarized people show up with strong opinions, and the people who care will start to love you more for it because you're being authentic. And then there was one more piece, which is just like, a lot of this stuff is stories in our head about like, oh, people are going to think this, or they're going to be, you know, upset because this, or I'm not. And it's like, everybody's still figuring it out. So that level of pressure that I think a lot of creators we put on ourselves is like, we don't need to be perfect. Like, the point isn't to be perfect. The point is to be improving and to show people that journey and to show up in that kind of vulnerable and imperfect way.
Jack, you're crushing this, man. The point about being polarizing is one of the hardest things for people to grasp, because we are conditioned to think that anyone disliking us instantly means it's bad and we are bad, which couldn't be farther from the truth. The saying that fortune favors the bold is true, because if you go on social media and you try to ride the line, no one is going to ride with you. So you need to have conviction in your opinions. Love that you said being open to change. I think that's a fundamental thing that any good person should have. But if you don't have the conviction to stand by your opinion, how in the world can you expect people to follow? Like, literally and figuratively. So I think that's a massive thing. That's something I struggled with really huge in the beginning, because you don't want to piss anyone off. And you're always like worried about, oh, what will this lead to down the road if I piss the wrong person off? You can't think like that and be productive at the same time. It's legitimately impossible.
I want to jump in and add something to this. So someone who I've been following lately is Matt Gray. He makes really good content about building businesses, being a creator, growing your audience. And he makes a really good point about like the importance of a niche. And this is something that I'm still exploring. But if you try to make videos for everybody, then you're going to, and this goes back to the virality piece, you're going to get like a bunch of people interested in this, and then a new bunch of people interested in this. And it's kind of this like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Whereas if you have strong opinions, you know exactly who you're trying to speak to, and you're just constantly feeding that person's like, you know, you're filling a void for them consistently, or a desire, whatever it is, about the same topic that they're working on or that's meaningful to them. That's when that like really deep connection forms, and they're like, I trust this person hardcore. And getting to that point of like, I would give this person money. Of course, they continually show up and give me what I want, versus like, you know, people who are, for example, just like trying to copy different trends and like go viral every time. Like, that's not a path to monetization unless you're, I don't know, in the US getting paid by the creator fund. But like, I'm in Canada, so I can't do that.
Yeah, that really does suck. We get screwed by that. But that's so true. And I think it's important to further explain like what a niche can be. I think a niche previously used to be like a topic. Now I feel like it's a type of person, and like that's who you're trying to resonate and connect with. And the example you gave, like his content is fantastic, and he speaks to like that kind of person. Whereas back in the day, like even when I first started my stuff, I would make it content about specific platforms, and then that really segmented my audiences, because I'd build an audience that was only focused about growing a podcast and only on Instagram or only on YouTube. And the problem with that is I didn't think of a creator holistically at the beginning. So it created these little silos that made it harder to grow beyond that. So I think that's a fantastic point. Figure out who the ideal person is, because typically we do fall into these buckets, right? Like you and I, the biggest thing we probably have in common is like our entrepreneurial or creator journey, right? But then besides that, like we probably wouldn't have fallen into many of the other same buckets. But if you have a deep understanding of like who that person is, you can still touch a wider net, if that makes sense. That probably didn't make much sense, but I hope you know what I mean.
Totally. And I mean, there's also this notion of like, as a creator, people want to see a bit more of like your lifestyle, your energy, right? Because that's feeding something energetically in them. It's like, we humans were so like mimetic, meaning like we copy, we see how other people are, and then it makes us feel like if super clear example. If you go on a date and act awkwardly, you're going to make the other person feel awkward, and there's not going to be a second date. If you show up with this powerful energy, same as a creator, people feel that and it brings it out in them. And so it's not necessarily like when we talk about a niche that, like you're saying, it could be the energy you're giving people on a regular basis, even more than the information that you're giving them.
Totally, man. And that feeling piece is a big reason why I advocate creating a ton of content, because people will be like, oh, I want it to feel right, or it feels forced. It's like, well, of course, until you've done something enough and felt enough things, how do you know what feels right? You simply can't. So I think finding your voice comes through, I had a saying where it was like, clarity comes through consistent action, because until then you don't know what's going on. So I think making a lot of content, finding your voice is huge. And I also love the fact that you said, there is value in sharing more of yourself, right? And making yourself the niche, because if people are going to invest in you, they do need to know, like, and trust you, and you need to give them that opportunity. And so those videos, unlikely to go viral, but they do serve a purpose.
Totally. And I'll just share an anecdote that builds on that. So like one of my recent clients, basically we've been working together for 3 weeks or so. And I brought her on this Zoom call that I hosted a week or two ago. And it was like a bunch of clients and my mom. And we were just doing this like breath work, all this inner work together and talking about it. And she was like, wow, like, on your TikTok, so much of it is just like you explaining stuff. And like, now I see you with your mom, and like, I just appreciate you so much more because I see more of who you are and I feel more connected to you. And so that was super validating, because it's like, that's a part of my plan moving into 2024 is just to make more content about things that I'm thinking about that don't relate directly to my work, and like my own experiences, not just here's how you do this, here's what you need to understand over and over with this like information only focus, but rather like my whole self.
Yeah, no, that's so huge. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves the opportunity or the permission to share more of themselves because they just assume others won't care, right? But you look at anyone who truly loves something, they can't get enough of it. Like, I will consume every bit of Jacksonville Jaguars content that there is out there because I love the team, right? And so weirdly enough, there are people out there that like Jack is their favorite team, or like I'm their favorite team, right? So if you think about it like that, like you're doing your fans or your followers a service through sharing that, because they do want those things. So if you break through that really internal belief that they don't care, it opens up your ability to be a lot more creative and share more things, and also do the whole Gary Vee piece where it's document and create, because documenting can be a lot easier because you're creating through simply existing. And that's what makes creation incredibly easy.
Love that.
Yeah, it was huge. Well, I think, man, you crushed this. That's all I had to say. Was there anything else that you would throw out as just like quick fire tips for new creators who are looking to get into it this year?
Yeah. First one is just like have a vision of where you're headed. Like, this is a big thing that I've been thinking about lately. So when we are addicted to something, it's like, that's the thing that gives us pleasure. That's the thing that gives us dopamine. And so that can be unhealthy if you're addicted to like, I don't know, smoking cigarettes. But if you have this goal of like becoming a creator and making content, and you're constantly connecting with that vision of how good it's going to feel as you build your business and scale your profiles, that's going to take advantage of your dopamine system and make the effort to get there feel better. So it's just kind of like, keep the big picture in mind and remember where you're going, because that's going to make you feel motivated, and that's going to make you want to do the work each day. That's been a huge one for me. Rest. I feel like, if we're trying to like constantly, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint kind of thing. So, if you're thinking like 3-year horizon, where do you want to be? Most of us can't make like 6 to 10 videos every single day for 3 years. That's going to burn us out. And so there's like seasons of, okay, I'm going to do this for a month, and every day I'm going to make 5 videos, but then I'm going to make 1 video a day for a month, and just like keeping that big picture in mind of like consistency is where the results come from.
Love that, man. Yeah, that's the line that I always say is if you can be consistent, it's a matter of when, not if. And that's a perfect way of doing it, is understanding that you're playing the long game. Because anyone who does that, success almost becomes guaranteed. But you dropped a ton of wisdom in this one, man. Where can people find you online? Like, what's your TikTok? What's your YouTube? What are all your handles?
Totally. So Instagram, wholesome.guide, TikTok, wholesome.guide, YouTube, wholesome_guide.
Awesome, man. Yeah, everything will be linked, so you can go find Jack in the description box of this video. Go give him a follow. Check out his content. It's helped me a ton, and he constantly is dropping gems. So thanks so much for coming, Jack. I appreciate you, brother, and keep crushing it, man.
Right on. Thanks for having me, Ben.